Cheatgrass is just like any other kind of grain grass. It doesn't really grow that high, maybe like 4 to 5 inches from what I remember of experiencing it a lot. And it grows pretty much anywhere in any soil because it doesn't take much. And what happens is it'll rain a bunch in the early spring, so it'll come up really green, and then in the late spring it basically just dries out and you have a bunch of dry grass that's just kindling, waiting for a spark.
And what happens is by the end of May, the cheatgrass is about yay tall. They're brown and dead looking. And so the last, let's say 10 years in the West, we've been having all these mega forest fires and land fires, 2.5 million acres, 3.5 million acres. It's all fueled by cheatgrass. So in July and August, lightning comes, the cheatgrass is all dry and tinder, it catches the cheatgrass on fire, a lightning strike, and then all this dead wood laying on the ground ends up being the fuel, because cheatgrass itself has very little fuel in it, because you know how much fuel is in one strand of that? Not much. But when you have all this dead wood laying around, and then before you know it, it's catastrophic. So rangeland firefighters call cheatgrass grassoline. Cheatgrass, all this, especially over there, see those tall wispy grasses that are just close to between us and that tree? That's all cheatgrass going to come. It gets a head start on the indigenous grasses, and so the indigenous grasses without the cheatgrass here, so all this green stuff right here is cheatgrass. The indigenous grasses would, right now, they'd be starting to think about germinating their seed. Well, the cheatgrass is already in process. So it gets a head start on the indigenous grasses, and then it crowds them out.
Why it's so invasive is that the seeds are just kind of up on top, and they kind of have these little barbs that'll stick into like your gloves or your pant legs.
Because once the seed load gets into the ground, it can remain there for years. So there's a biologist up in northern Utah working on making a sterile cheatgrass. And so we'd actually come and plant this sterile cheatgrass, and it would go through its life cycle without dropping seed load. And then we'd use up the seed load that was in the ground, and eventually we'd use up all the old seed load. We wouldn't plant any more sterile cheatgrass, and the indigenous species would come back.
You know, what I would say for everyone kind of involved is be aware of what is native and non-native to your homeland.